Welcome back, everybody, to another ecosystem episode of Retention Chronicles. Super excited for today's chat, another really unique one. We're joined by Nick and Adam from Elephant Room. Not only is Elephant Room an e-commerce agency focused on the Shopify ecosystem, like many of our past guests have been, but one, they're based in Australia, which is awesome. And two, they're launching a Shopify app out of the agency, which is really cool. And I'd love to talk a little bit about some similarities that I'm already seeing between the Malomo founding story and Giftnote. But we might get into that in a second. But as we do, Nick and Adam, would you like to say hello and introduce yourselves and your roles a little bit?
Amazing. Thanks for the intro. So I'm Adam. I'm one of the directors here at Elephant Room. We started the agency almost 9 years ago in February. And we've basically grown quite significantly, focusing on three main practices: web development, Shopify Plus web development, performance marketing in Google, Meta, Snap, TikTok, and all the other performance platforms, and CRM, focusing pretty exclusively on Klaviyo. All the Aussies say Klaviyo, but because your audiences are probably not so Australian, I'm going to say Klaviyo, but I'm sure someone's going to rip my head off of that a bit later. But over the years, we've been basically focusing and targeting on working with like emerging Aussie D2C brands, in particular supporting them in their international growth expansion. There's a lot of really cool Australian brands making their way into America and Europe, and internationalization is a very big topic and focus for us. And yeah, I guess that's sort of been our founding journey. And then I guess with the support of Nick, who will introduce himself in a sec, we essentially developed Giftnote internally, which we'll talk about a bit more later, which is a sort of a COVID brainchild for a lot of shared experiences that I had, Nick had, Matt, the other director, had as they had their baby boys during COVID. And yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, but we couldn't be happier, to be honest. I'll give it to Nick as well.
Nice intro, Adam. I've been at Elephant Room for coming up to 5 years. I actually went to uni or college, as you would say, over there with him. Adam and Matt, the other director, would often not show up to any of the lectures. I would be there, and then they would scramble at the last minute to submit any assignments. But yeah, I came on board 5 years ago, and I started off as a web project manager, and I've had many different roles and many hats, from going over to marketing and also CRM with Klaviyo as well. But now I kind of help manage the client relationships from a client success point of view, across all of those offerings that we have, as well as tech partner success, or partnerships rather. So chatting with the likes of Noah and you guys over at Malomo, Klaviyo, where we recently got awarded Klaviyo Elite Partner status. So that was exciting news. I think one of only 3 or 4 in APAC. And then all of the other partners from reviews platforms like Akendo, loyalty platforms, subscription platforms, basically the whole Shopify ecosystem, which is quite tight-knit, especially here down under. Everyone knows each other. So it's a very small world. And yeah, very excited to be venturing onto the app side with Giftnote as well.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic overview, fellas. Appreciate that. I'm already like loving the Australian versus American nomenclature battle of like Klaviyo, which you have to say Klaviyo now because you're an elite partner. I think
that's exactly right.
Uni, we were talking before we started recording about the fact that it's like becoming the depths of winter here, and it's the hottest part of summer in Australia. So but all of that said, we're all operating in the same ecosystem, and I think especially for you and I, Nick, thinking about a lot of the same things from a partnership standpoint every day in our workings. So it's not all dissimilar, I should say. So excited to dive into Elephant Room more and now Giftnote. But before we do that, we always like to start with a couple things that you guys are excited about in your personal lives. So if you could, I know it's summer there. There's probably a lot of craziness and fun stuff planned. What's going on? What are you excited about?
I'm very excited for the tennis season starting here, coming up. So Australian Open Grand Slam. I'm going to make my way down to Melbourne to see it, and I'm a big tennis freak, so very excited for that. And I think they're also filming, I think Netflix is filming like similar to the Formula One one. They've got like a tennis one happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so Nick Kyrgios is kind of like the iconic tennis player here. He's infamous, but for all the best and worst reasons. But I love him. We love him. So we're keen to see him on the court. He's definitely changing a lot of the attitudes on like a gentleman's game. Or even though to make it a bit more louder, rowdier, a bit more aggressive. And we're very very excited for that.
What would you say the general sentiment is across the country? Is it
for Nick?
Supportive? Yeah,
I think supportive.
Yeah.
Like he's in the end, Australia has a very large sporting culture, and we sort of, there's heaps of sports that we specialize in. Nick's like very big on rugby, for example, but we don't often have like really prolific like big sport players come through. Every 5 years is a large one, and the tennis right now it's Kyrgios. And he'll be here for the next like 3 to 5 years, and I think it's exciting for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say I follow all the Grand Slams very closely. I don't really watch tennis outside of that, but I love it. It's a vastly underrated sport to watch, I think. It's always like super exciting, especially in the Grand Slams.
For sure.
Have you been to the Australian Open before? Or this will be a first?
No, this will be my first time. I've never been. I've never had the opportunity to go, but I think now there's like traveling is now a bit more open. The flight's a bit more reasonable, and I think there's a lot of people that are just genuinely keen to get out and about.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Adam's obsessed with tennis. I've played him a few times after work, and he beats me. I just try to wear him down and get him frustrated.
He mentally wears me down.
Yeah.
He talks the Nick Kyrgios track. A lot of smack. A lot of smack is said on the course that can't be repeated. Amazing. One of our account executives played college tennis, and all the world played with his brother growing up. So yeah, we are fans as well. Nick, how about you? What are you excited about, man?
Well, Adam mentioned one of the ideas around Giftnote, which we can get to, was it started from when me and my other founder, we had our firstborn children, and Sebastian, my son, is 1 today. So happy birthday!
Oh my gosh!
Always wanted to do that shout out, happy birthday to kid.
Listen back to this. We just got another listener.
Yeah. So
our youngest listener yet.
Yeah. We're having a first birthday for him on Saturday. It's the dinosaur theme. So I've got a bit of a T-Rex costume that I'll be wearing. So very excited.
Don't scare him. Don't scare him too much.
Yeah, we've had a few run-throughs, practices, so that I don't scare off all the little kids. But we'll see how we go.
Amazing.
It's exciting. Beautiful.
You'll have to keep us updated with that.
Yeah.
See a video of you.
I think the headshot for Nick for the podcast should definitely be in the dinosaur costume.
Agreed.
Both Nick and Matt beautifully had their children right before, they're both firstborns, before Black Friday, Cyber Monday a year ago, and it was chaos for me. I mean, like both obviously there's a big team and there's a lot of support around the place, but Nick and Matt helped me on more broader thinking and more strategic stuff for the agency, and yeah, it was chaotic. I was like, you guys definitely timed this against me, but it all worked out beautifully in the end.
Do you think this year will be less chaotic then compared to last?
Every year we grow, clients grow. There's always a new, 11th hour, something that pops up. I think that's just the reality of it. Even I think what I've learned is like you could be the most diligent, the most organized in the room, but there's just external variables that just come at you. And you just sort of need to, the ability isn't in being organized, is being able to sort of adapt and sort of modify your mentality quickly, but also do it in a really polite and professional way. So you're not necessarily annoying anyone, but you're also doing what's right for the customer. But it's a sensitive time, it's a sensitive time in general for everyone, but overall, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. This is my first ever Black Friday, Cyber Monday in e-commerce. I spent a lot of time.
Wow.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on like the enterprise MarTech side, which was crazy in its own right. But I think e-commerce is gonna be a little
different. It's an entirely different league. I could imagine the pace and the velocity is an entirely another level. You're on a different planet.
Yeah, I would argue that like that is true across the board between enterprise and e-commerce, not just for Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
For sure.
Like enterprise versus e-commerce is like some sort of like super tight knit society on the top end that like everybody plays by the rules and like there's all this red tape, whereas e-commerce is like the wild west.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, when I'm sharing my apartment to work from home with my partner, she works in enterprise and for fintech, and I walk past listening to their conversations on their calls. I have no idea what they're talking about. It's very confusing.
Like, did I just hear some sort of rule or law? What is that?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny because both our wives and partners, or like between Nick and Matt and myself, they're all in corporate. And we're just like, I could imagine sometimes like our horror stories versus their horror stories are like entirely different beasts. And it's just like, wow. I mean, we thought we had it bad, but you got some more other shit going on there. I don't even want to know about it.
Yeah. Can you talk to your work friends about this? Because I'm not going to give any help.
This is not healthy. This is not healthy bedtime chat.
Right. Great. Okay, so I know you in your intro you kind of gave an overview of Elephant Room, but would love to hear like going back to the beginning, like the founding story of it, what you were focused on then, and how it's evolved to the agency offering today, and then maybe sort of let's start to get into how Giftnote spun out of that. But that's a lot, so let's start at the beginning and work our way up.
Yeah. So I think when we first started, my parents have been in the rag trade or retail for 40 years. And it's a very typical immigrant success story for here in Australia and also in America. Like a lot of people just sort of entered retail because that's what they knew and it's what they could do. But at the time, already, 10, 11 years ago, I put their business on Magento when I was just finishing or starting university. Both Nick and myself and Matt, we all did similar like engineering degrees. So we all come from like an IT background. So some of the technical concepts weren't too alien for us. So back in the day, I mean, freelancing, Magento, WordPress work, a lot of the time, put my parents on Magento, learned a lot about it, essentially an enterprise e-commerce platform and how great it was, but also how bad it was. But at the time, Shopify was really in its infancy, and you didn't know what like a SaaS-based e-com platform could really do. I know like BigCommerce, they had a different name back then, but they were running around, they're Aussie, but they were too little to really blink out.
What year was this, Adam?
This was 9.5 years ago, roughly, almost 10 years ago. And it was, Magento was ready in version 1.2 or 1.3. It was very early days. And then over the course of the period, like we focused on small to medium businesses, and we would essentially, as with everyone, every agency owner, any business owner, to be honest, in the first year, you just say yes to everyone, which is good advice and bad advice. So our catchphrase at the time was big results for small businesses, and kind of playing on the term like an elephant in the room as well. So we grew and grew, and we always had like a small book of e-commerce clients. We had a large book of WordPress and service-based businesses. And then it got to a point where we were opening up additional services for the business, like paid media, SEO, CRM. And some of these e-commerce businesses were just growing at a crazy rate compared to the service-based businesses. Just imagine a law firm compared to an online retailer selling bed sheets. And you're looking at your performance as an agency, and you're like, you want to service these law firms, but also you realize that you need to do what's right for you. And then over the course of a 3-year journey, we started transitioning into exclusively e-commerce. And then that was Magento, Neato, BigCommerce, Shopify, WooCommerce. And then over the course of an additional 2 years, we started specializing, double downing on Shopify was our nominated platform of choice. And then over that period, all the partner ecosystem started blowing up. So you could imagine the App Store, what it is today versus 5 years ago, is an entirely different, environment. And then Shopify Plus badge came through, that exposed an inner circle of like partners and a broader ecosystem of tech vendors. And then the narrative for the agency basically changed exclusively to an e-commerce performance agency. And that's essentially the journey to sort of today and probably the foreseeable future.
Very cool. Very cool. I love getting the founding story, and you're certainly not the first guest, I feel like, that like started out by just helping his parents get online, whatever that meant to them back in the day.
Well, I mean, Gary Vee wrote the book. As much as people love him or hate him, like he literally put his parents' wine store online, and then that was his platform, right? To get going. And I think there's a lot you can learn from how your parents run a business. I mean, how my dad did a stock take back in the day would just go up and then across and then multiply it, and then that's your stock. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, funny story about Adam's dad is he still does appear in our office from time to time with technical questions or like returned orders. And he'll just be wandering through Adam's background, tapping him on the back saying,
a wild father appears. Yeah, he randomly appears unannounced, doesn't really care that we're on a meeting. And I mean, yeah, he's got a way of doing business, but we keep him busy. He's all right.
So their business is still going, it sounds like.
Yeah, they're obviously getting a bit older now, but we've like downsized into like a hybrid drop shipping business. And they support me here and there, and I support them, and it's relatively chilled. But nothing what it used to be. They used to have like a 3-story warehouse, and it's now they're retiring and trying to enjoy their life a little bit more outside of a warehouse.
Right, makes sense. So this is something you alluded to earlier, about like the sort of the Shopify or e-commerce ecosystem being super tight knit in Australia, whereas I think here it's maybe a little bit more robust or mature or competitive, however you want to say it. I'm curious, with that in mind, like what do you think makes Elephant Room stick out? And to me, a couple of things that you said were really focused on getting like the highest tier partner level at the bigger platforms like the Shopify's and Klaviyo's, the international expansion. Those were a couple of things I heard. Would you agree that those are the things that make you stick out? Would you add anything?
Yeah. So, ultimately they're badges, and in the end of the day, the badges are a reflection of the value and the commitment and the energy and the effort that we put into sort of building the relationship, and the relationship is divided into people and tech. Now, what where we're different is that there are a lot of Shopify development agencies that focus really heavily on the technology, and a lot of them are, exploring headless, and they're doing really cool stuff in that space. And that's part of us. But we also have hedged or split our offering, our practices into the performance side, because we do see the value exchange being bigger than just building widgets. We feel that brands, especially the D2C emerging brands, I know there's a lot of like stigma around like one-stop shop. We're not saying we're a one-stop shop, but there's definitely an experience where we're looking at Shopify as a whole. We're looking at the business as a whole, from the warehouse level to the customer experience level on the PDP, and seeing how can we yield our relationships, our know-how, our combined knowledge to create better value. And it sort of goes goes into the whole theory of, the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. And that's really what we want to be offering for our clients, is that if we can compound and cross-pollinate the CRM side, the first-party data collection side, the paid media side, and the web development side in a slick, full service offering, then the value stands out quite a bit more for our clients. And that's sort of what becomes our competitive edge. And look, we've eaten a lot of shit for 9 years to build out a performance media arm that's managing $80 million a year in paid media, which is significant, and it's not a small number, and it's, at least for Australia standards, and it's something that we have put the investment in from day zero alongside Dev that kind of creates that value exchange.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious, and Mariah, you might have thoughts on this too, but we rarely talk about performance marketing on this podcast because we're typically so much more focused on the retention side. But I've seen so much lately about like the shift in ad spend from Facebook to TikTok, or Facebook to Instagram, or now Instagram to TikTok. Like, how have you adjusted your strategies? What are you leaning off of and leaning into in today's environment?
Yeah, like look, that we battle that question every single day, and we're actually battling it a lot more now walking into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. The reality is that we can't rely on like platform reported return. So that's one thing, because it's blended and it overlaps, and some platforms have 7 day view, 1 day click, whatever it is, or 30 plus 1. So we basically establishing an MER, like a marketing efficiency ratio or a cost of sale ratio, an aggregate, to then dictate how the media as an aggregate is working in the brand, for the business itself. Then what we're trying to work, we drill that down by saying what was branded, what was not branded, so we can at least allocate the percentage of revenue and spend, so we know what was really high intent direct and what was a bit more on the merchandise side. And then what we do is subdivide that by new customer versus repeat customer entries as well. So trying to understand what is actually growing the business and what's actually, again, on the retention side of the media, because media does actually account for a lot of retention-based customers that simply typing in a brand name that kind of get lost in the performance media arm. So what we try to do is we split it out into those like 3 or 4 major pillars. Then the narrative is quite straightforward to say, hey, like by doing this, we can see this. It's never clear cut. And then what we try to do to cement it or battle harden it is more of this like incremental philosophy. So instead of doing Snapchat and TikTok in parallel because it gets blurred and you never really know what's going to work, we try to have a very strict pacing policy where we only really want to be doing one new media channel at a time, and then look back at our benchmark numbers to say, hey, this is what's impacting, this is what our efficiency is, this is what's actually going on after we did this. And that's how we're sort of approaching it and tackling it now. And that opens so many more doors once you have a conversation in that frame as well.
For you, for the benchmarks that you're saying, because you can't trust the platform itself, are you looking in Google Analytics, or is that something you're doing in-house, or like another software?
So Google Analytics is like a last click scenario. So it's good. It is good because it gives you the snapshot of the last click environment for people that have opted in for cookies that don't have ad blockers and aren't working in incognito or some other niche Firefox browser. So we primarily use some of that. But what we also do is Shopify makes it quite easy to export some of the data out of it. What we then do is we ingest that in a very large warehouse. We have like our ETL tools set up that are basically bringing in everything by the day, by platform, impressions, clicks, spend, and revenue. And then what we do is we have some blending formulas to actually figure out what the pace is for the day. And that's how we sort of report it back in Data Studio or Looker Studio now, or Google Sheets, depending on the client requirements. This is like, that's been a very big investment for us as well. And that's sort of where we're trying to sort of get to a bit more on the performance side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a huge undertaking. I have so many questions about that. I think I'll just ask one, and then I definitely want to get into Giftnote. I'm curious, when you think about ad spend, are you excited to see that driving retention, aka like repeat purchasers, or is part of you like, we should really be setting up things that keep them, sort of like in the ecosystem, not needing to come through ads for the repeat, like yes, a program or a community-based approach?
I think every brand, like literally every single brand that I've spoken to, my AirPods are dying, but have said, oh, they would have come anyway. Like they would have purchased with us regardless, right? Mm-hmm. So then what you need to say is like, well, it's kind of like you're an insurance policy. Like that's why, and then the conversation with media on retention gets very precarious, because you're like, well, I don't know if I had an offer on, would they come, would they not come? Is it competitive? Are other people bidding on your brand? The reality is that no one wants to spend money that they didn't need to spend. And that's kind of it. And the user experience on an ad product is nowhere near as good as like a CRM retention-based product that's first party, that's baked into your website. So you also need to understand the consumer, like clicking a little Google Shopping ad compared to a fully fledged return management page, or a loyalty product or something is entirely different. So we do want to push more people on site and not be so reliant on media as well. And the reality is that it's getting more expensive. Like buying a house anywhere in the world is more expensive today than it was 2 years ago. It's a commodity that's very contentious, and there are a lot of bidders, and it just gets more costly. And the client's product inflation isn't aligned with the inflation in media, so we need to offset it with other places and channels.
Absolutely, awesome. That's fascinating. Not something that I know a ton about, but that was a great overview. All right, let's get in, and I think that could segue well into retention, but I don't want to go to retention before Giftnote. So tell us how sort of like Giftnote was thought up of. You said COVID brainchild. So what was like the impetus for the idea and the problem that it solved?
So the genesis of Giftnote came about sort of like serendipitously at the same time as Nick, Matt, and myself. So it was my dad's 70th birthday. Both Nick and Matt had their firstborn, and there was also a few other clients experiencing this issue, and everyone has experienced this issue. So someone has either bought a gift on behalf of someone else, has sent it to someone else, or you have received a gift yourself. But what we discovered and what we identified was that the gift message, so the really sentimental message saying, hey, Nick, congrats on your firstborn, can't wait to meet him. And that actual getting the physical product were disconnected. So that experience happened to me so I had my birthday, my dad's 70th, like we bought my dad a whole bunch of clothing, and he was like, who's this from? I received a bottle of whiskey from like 3 friends, and then I had to go to the WhatsApp group and saying, hey guys, like I got a bottle of whiskey. I don't really know who it's from, but thank you anyway. And then like you're kind of doing this, and then Nick and Matt are getting, baby shower gifts, and you kind of have this like WTF moment. You're like, oh, this is so nice, but I have no idea who this is from.
Who sent it?
Yeah.
And I think everyone's smiling like on the call, because I think everyone literally has experienced it on either side of the spectrum. So what we went down the sort of rabbit hole was like, what can we do from a technical perspective to try mitigate this? And what we essentially developed was Giftnote, which is an ability for a gift giver to capture the recipient information at point of checkout. So I'm buying Nick a pair of socks, happy birthday, buddy, and I record and type in a message. Then when the merchant fulfills that order, they provide a tracking number. We're then listening to the tracking number, monitoring it the whole way through until it gets marked as delivered. And then we send our gift note payload at the point of delivery. So within 5 to 10 minutes of receiving it, he can receive an SMS and or an email that says, hey, what I wrote at the point of checkout. And essentially we hold the payload and then deliver it at the time when the time is right.
Interesting.
So the brand is able to design a beautifully branded email or gift message that we will then put in the gift message from the customer. And for many, it might be their first kind of interaction with the brand. So, me receiving a package with a onesie for my baby with no gift card versus a nicely branded email from the brand introducing me to them with the gift message, as well as maybe some real estate to say this is how to care for the product, or sign up to our mailing list for more information or a discount on your first purchase. It just gives the brand a bit more real estate and the opportunity to make a good first impact as well.
100%. Yeah. That is awesome. Incredible. Like, how is this not a thing yet is my first thought. Like, how did Shopify miss building something like this? I'm curious, do you have like integrations with the messaging platforms, or are you sending the email SMS from Giftnote itself?
Yeah, so we on default on install, we handle the transit ourselves. But optionally, the user can then integrate Klaviyo, and then in the future, there'll be PostScript and a few others, attentive as well from the SMS side. What will happen at that point is you can integrate it. They will then create an event trigger inside the platform. They'll get access to do more customized email, more conditional stuff, more transactional stuff. Better, they can look at the metric analytics on usage as well. So yeah, that's essentially the beginning of the integration journey. And then it also gets a bit more interesting as you think about it more, where, for example, if you are a review or a UGC platform, it doesn't really make sense for that platform to send a review request to the gift giver. It should go to the recipient. So what we're sort of framing this is like unlock your gifting potential, or be able to sort of cohort very conveniently your gift recipients away from your actual core customers, and then understand what your giftable revenue is. And that's sort of like the higher level umbrella that we're sort of double clicking on.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to have like a segmented tracking page for gifts now. Like, clearly have to do that. That is awesome. You were going to say something though, Mariah.
Well, Nick, I'll let you expand because I have another thought, but I'm curious to see what you're going to say.
Yeah, so touching on that point of Adam in identifying gift recipients, which you can't currently do from Shopify out of the box. Let's just say an example, I'm sending Noah a bottle of whiskey. I don't know if you're a drinker or not, but let's just say that I'm not a drinker. Let's say I send him the bottle of whiskey, and the brand that I'm purchasing from is going to think that I'm the customer and that I'm a whiskey drinker, right? So in the future, I'm going to get hit up with ads on Facebook, on TikTok now, get all their emails, all their CRM emails, whereas you're the person perhaps that they should be actually sending that to. So Giftnote can help with that in converting you into a database, a customer, and an opted-in customer within their database. So yeah, was that the question you were going to ask?
Okay. It's almost like we planned it. It's very similar along that line. So like the notion that you like, especially around this time of year, right? Like heading into the holidays, we're recording in the beginning of November. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday is like 2 weeks away. So the idea of the merchant not having like the customer versus the consumer and like how they're different in gift giving. So that's exactly what I was going to talk about, is like there's also a huge perk for merchants to grow their like branding and their experience with the person who's actually consuming their product, and to ask for, you know, that UGC or those reviews, or to know, like, even if, so the, like, say Nick in the whiskey example, you're buying and you mark like, oh, this is for Noah's birthday or something along those lines. Now the merchant knows that, oh, you bought a bottle of whiskey for your friend's birthday around this time, or like even segmenting for like different holidays, because now they have more information on like you and why you purchase from them, and then also have more information about Noah and his consuming like patterns, or that he's been introduced to the brand.
Exactly.
Super interesting.
So imagine like 1 year after I buy a whiskey bottle for Noah, the same brand hits me up. I'm in their segment of gift senders, and they hit me up saying, does Noah need another bottle for his birthday?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Always yes. Yeah.
And that's sort of a part of like the reconversion and the retention side, but it's kind of like one of these very hard metrics to compute if you didn't have third-party tech, is what percentage of my gift recipients converted to first-time buyers. That is like, and then just to sort of frame that better, 45% on average of all Black Friday, Cyber Monday purchases are gifts. So in that bucket, there's like a lot of people that are eventually, sorry, this building next door, a lot of people that eventually reconvert, that we can then borrow, we can track the entire way through, which is quite exciting.
Yeah. It's like, we talk about this a lot, like turning retention into an acquisition channel. And this is sort of doing that very clearly, where like you've already acquired one customer. Now you're turning that single customer into, you know, you're retaining them on one side because you're providing a better customer experience that, you know, they might get hit up from their friend and say, not only did I love the whiskey, but the message I got from the brand was, you know, beautiful. And like, I'm really interested in checking them out. Now you've made the purchaser happy, the customer, but also the consumer really great experience from the get-go.
And part of our narrative is like, you're actually servicing two customers, not one, in a gifting context. And a lot of people don't, a lot of brands aren't really appreciating that as well.
Right. Yeah. And also, like, what's fascinating to me, Mariah, I'm sure that you're thinking about this too, is like the similarities between the Malomo story and Giftnote. Like, for sure. Malomo was founded, like, there's so much overlap. It's crazy. Malomo was founded out of an agency to solve like a single problem, which was people don't come back after one bad shipping experience. Like literally 84% of customers will not come back after one poor shipping experience. So our founders were running an agency. They noticed this problem. They solved it ad hoc a couple times for a couple of their merchants. And then they were like, oh my God, this is like a huge opportunity. So then they solved the problem of like better order tracking, retain more customers. And then they're like, okay, but like, what if we turn this cost center of order tracking and shipment to a revenue channel? Like, what if we started supplying like products or complementary products on the tracking page? What if we started driving subscription and including Okendo reviews? And like the fact that you guys thought about it as like, I'm sure very similarly, like we all want to know where our gifts come from, but now it's expanded already into, all right, but like, what does that mean for the actual bottom line of a business? Both on the retention and the acquisition side. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and it helps businesses really put more capital into like marketing top funnel for how they are a gifting brand, rather than just like merch. It's more, hey, we've got a gift guide. This is great for the gift giver. There's like actually a very different way to skin it for them. And that's important because everything's getting more competitive. Like it's in the end, like you need to diversify the audience that you're targeting. My mother might not be your primary target at your core range, but she might be interested in buying it as a gift because she knows her daughter or her son are entertaining or using your products. And that all those analytics and insights gives the justification to sort of pursue it further. And that's really the area that, again, we want to own and really like target.
Absolutely. So maybe you can't say too much about this yet, which is totally fine. But like, I'm curious, that first email, is the goal of the brand, obviously outside of providing like a great gift giving experience and the consumer being thrilled with the gift that they got, both with the gift itself and the message they receive, is the ultimate goal in that first touch point with that new consumer to capture their contact information?
Get an opt-in, yeah. So we know that an opt-in is cherished, and you have to do it right. Like, you can't just assume the opportunity to spam a gift recipient if they didn't actually opt in. But the payload, because it's essentially a transactional email that we're sending through as a gift note, is a transactional email. So it's important to remember that. Yeah. That's the real estate that Nick was talking about, to say, hey, here you can get your aftercare information. You can potentially get your, you can't really put too much of an upsell or a promo code in a transactional email. So there's a line that you need to walk on there. But there's definitely opportunities in getting them onboarded with a firmer opt-in. You can give them potentially an incentive, the gift recipient incentive. You can do cashback. You can actually have a bit of fun with it if you start sort of working it quite intelligently.
Yeah, we have a very similar situation. Like, all of our order tracking emails are transactional as well, of course. But there is some real estate toward the bottom, as you guys probably know, to include some more marketing type content. And, you know, the brands who actually leverage that see tremendous results. Like, if you look at the brands who are doing some marketing, tactful marketing, I should say, at the bottom of their transactional messages, compared to those who aren't, like, the results that they're actually seeing from those emails are really, really impressive.
Yeah, like I think a long-term vision for us is building more of a robust gifting API for this. So a smart or creative development agency or vendor could look at this experience and ecosystem and have some fun with it. So, you know, I might say, hey, Noah, you've got a gift, click this link to view the gift. And maybe I wouldn't maybe recommend this, but you could gate the gift to force the opt-in or force the sign up to view it or to validate it. You can do things in certain ways to cut it and craft it as fun as you want. And ultimately we'll be adding rich media in gifts as well. So potentially think like video and audio messages. Maybe I think there are other elements that you can use to enrich it, because you only have so much canvas inside of an email and SMS that you can work with. So if you start thinking about taking it to the browser or an app, there's a whole new world of rich media that opens up. Think about animations, think about audio, think about all the other senses and sensations that you could potentially bake in. And that actually makes the whole thing quite interesting. Scanning a QR code when the gift is delivered to then actually do it, take it to a browser. There's a whole new world of like gifting experiences that we haven't even really unlocked on, that we are developing in the background.
Sure. Yeah, that is awesome. So is this available? Is it GA now? Are people using it?
We're fully GA. There's a team of 4 powering it right now, all incubated from within Elephant Room, which is really exciting. We've been really fortunate enough to sort of like, you know, justify the time and effort for these people to sort of support it. Nick is a big lead on it right now. It's available in the App Store as well. Just type in Giftnote or giftnote.com. We've got flawless reviews right now. So if you want to battle test it, you want a demo, chat to Nick, he'll hook you up. Happy to entertain any time zone as well. famous last words, right? Yeah, we're ready to go. We've got over 50 to 60 installs happening in production right now. We're listening to customer reviews every single day, and it's been really good. One thing that I will note as well is, compared to other apps, we don't take a percentage of the order, so we're not clipping the transaction. Installing apps every single day on the Elephant Room side, we know some of the contention that comes with. We've adopted more of like a quota usage-based approach rather than just taking percentage of order. And the commercial model actually works out considerably cheaper than any sort of competitive or relatively similar product as well. So we do know what gripes agencies and brands have on certain app pricing. We've really worked hard to bake that into our model so it works for everyone.
So when you say that it's not on a per order basis overall, but it's more consumption, I'm always curious about just like business models overall, but especially in the App Store and the Shopify app store.
I could listen to this podcast again in a year's time and be like, what the hell were you saying? Because like it doesn't stand anymore. And maybe that's a good thing to have, but right now in the current iteration, it's you're basically purchasing lots of 25 gift notes, which is your monthly quota. And then every gift note has an overage of a couple cents over your quota. So obviously November is bigger for some brands compared to January, and you have the option to sort of lump up your quota or your credits to go to sort of go as the brand grows and needs it as well.
Got it.
It essentially comes down to 50 or 60 cents a gift note, realistically. And in that 50 to 60 cents, we're doing a lot. Like you have your whole integration with Klaviyo, or your branding, basic analytics. We have like we're indexing and tracking over 600 carriers globally as well. So just to think about the value that's coming out of that single 50 cent is quite tremendous.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. We should talk offline about some of the back end stuff and explore like an actual technology partnership on top of the agency thing that we got going on.
Sure.
Because I've got a few ideas that I think I'll save from the public.
Let's do it.
But that is fascinating, guys. Congrats on launching that. That's a huge step. Sounds like it's off to an incredible start as well, and couldn't be a better time, really, right around the gift giving season.
Definitely. And like a big shout out to Cal and Matt and Nick as well, who've been driving it and pushing it quite a bit. Everyone sort of brought their own like piece to the party. And it's great because we're surrounded by awesome tech partners as well, like that are established, that we're learning from and sharing with, and that's what's making it exciting. We're yet to do an American event. That might happen next year if we get permission. So we will. That's something that we'll like. That's a big milestone for us next year to do a bit of like a launch somewhere in America next year. So hopefully we can bring you guys along.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'd rather come there, but if we have to do it here, sure.
Yeah.
Nick, you were going to say something.
I was just going to ask a question for the Malomo founders, because obviously we're still working full time on Elephant Room as well as Giftnote on the side. How do you balance your time to the best of your ability, and how are they planning their weeks, around, this is obviously when they were first still an agency. That's probably the challenge at the moment, when you're building something out of an agency, is making sure that you're like fully servicing your clients and partners on the Elephant Room side, but also, helping to grow Giftnote at the same time and taking care of a 1-year-old baby at the same time as well.
Funny.
It's all an interesting challenge.
I was going to ask you how you're balancing all these things, but I've known Yao and Anthony, the founders of. I actually hired them to build me an app when they were running their agency, so I've known them, well before Malomo was even ideated, and talked to them before they had a name for it, while they were in ideation, and through the shutting down of the agency. And I can't speak for them, but I can definitely say that they did everything that they could from like a manual perspective, and sort of delayed like full focus on building out a platform as long as they could, until they felt like they had significant, validation that they were really onto something. It sounds like you guys might have already crossed that bridge, frankly. And then I think the answer that they would give, and I could be wrong about this, so I'll have to check with Yao if he has something different, but I think it was like, once they realized they couldn't give the clients the time that they used to be able to, the time that they were like, that they deserved and that they needed from the agency, they were like, okay, we have enough here. We have the validation we needed. Plus, like, we know that we can't run two full-time businesses at once. And they just straight up, shut down the agency. So
any Elephant Room clients listening to this, we will not be shutting down the agency. If anyone's getting any creepy ideas, and I already know the clients that might be listening, and I know how they're neurotic like me, so we're not going anywhere. All good. It's all good. It's all good in the hood.
You guys have another founder too, that's comforting a little. Two babies in the mix.
Adam just saved himself about 30 phone calls there.
Right.
There's 35 beautifully talented people inside the Elephant Room team that are also grinding very hard to make clients get value. But no, it's an interesting point, and a lot of people talk about balancing the grind, and obviously Nick's got a third requirement, which is his baby boy, and it's challenging for everyone. And everyone's now working from home more, they're working longer hours. It's interesting, and it's no one, like, we're putting a big priority on mental health, and we don't want to be burning out as well. So there is a balance there, but what that looks like is yet to be determined. But I think where the biggest thing for me is, like, Nick, he's allocated majority of the week towards Giftnote. And as we get more engineering, more talent, and the commercials for Giftnote, because we haven't done any funding, we're incubating it ourselves. So we're doing it in a moderate way that actually is sustainable, and actually we can grow from it as well.
Yeah. It's a very interesting balance, but I would definitely argue a great problem to have.
We're very fortunate, and we know and appreciate how sort of lucky we are that the things have landed as they have. But having said that, we work hard as well, and we give it 120% without any doubt.
No substitute for hard work, which leads me to my last question, and we might have just gotten Adam's answer. Given where you guys have, gotten to in your careers, obviously extremely impressive, and with the Giftnote launch, another sort of like notch. But I know you're just getting started. What do you two as individuals attribute, the success to this point to, and what sort of guides you in your pursuit of that on a day-to-day basis?
There's a lot of cliche answers for this one, to be honest.
We want to hear them all. I guess
it's a cliche for a reason. So the first thing as well is, like, the team. Like, obviously, having a co-founder or a solid team, you literally drive yourself, induce like a psychotic coma if you were just doing everything alone. Like, I don't think any one human being is resilient enough to handle so many compounding pressures. You need people that are in the room, that challenge you, that listen to you and accept you as well, and all in all sort of parallel moments. I think don't be afraid as, like, leaders or managers or founders to hire people that are better, senior, or experienced than you. It's not a bad thing. I started the agency when I was 23. I don't know shit, to be honest, and I thought I knew a lot. And as we grew and we matured and we had exposure to more sophisticated clients, more sophisticated talent, you understand your value is not necessarily being the smartest guy in the room. It's also about motivating and driving and empowering people to do their best work. So that's a really big thing. Don't hire blended roles. Give people very clear responsibilities. People will wear multiple hats, you can't avoid that, but also make sure that the role is defined and it's streamlined. And if someone's doing paid media, they don't need to be doing CRM. Get a CRM person, as an example. If it's a web developer, they shouldn't be doing design. Get a designer for that. And I think one reading that I was recommended, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the people in the community would know, is like the Y Combinator Paul Graham. He's got like a monologue or a blog, I guess, on do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
That's everyone. I know everyone comments on that and everyone says it. I know Guy Ross, I know everyone mentions it, but it's so true. You just need to do things that make no sense and get your hands so dirty to the point where you're like, okay, in the coal mine, I understand exactly all the moving parts to sort of get this raw commodity out and make it and convert it into energy. How can I put people, systems, processes, technology to help like supplement that? But you can't do that without deeply understanding the actual problem. And I think it's a very good read, and it's given me a lot of perspective. I think a lot of people just come in expecting shit just to work like a miracle, and it's just gonna work. Like, I got this CRM, I'm gonna install HubSpot, it's just gonna work for me. It's like, nah, and there's no way it's gonna work. Like, you need to really deeply understand the nuances, your pipe, your stages, all the contention, the objections, yada yada yada.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of saying earlier about the Malomo founding was, they did everything that they possibly could to delay the actual software build before they knew, to your point, like they did everything that didn't scale for as long as they could until they validated the problem that they were solving and that it actually mattered.
Like every new Giftnote install, their first Giftnote, between the four of us, we have a Slack channel, we're manually watching the tracking number. We know if we missed the Giftnote delivery on the first Giftnote, we've botched the experience. So every single first Giftnote order, we're manually monitoring. Like, there's no beautiful engineering code or AI that's doing it. It's literally us at 4 a.m. looking at a niche carrier based out of South America to see if it's going to deliver or not, and our Giftnote's going to send.
That was exactly our founding story. Like, they would track the orders at every stage throughout the process and literally manually hit send on an email. Put that out.
If the client thinks it's a bot doing it, high five, we've done our job. And now we've got to get some engineers to figure out how this will work if we tripled our size.
Right. Exactly. That's awesome. Nick, how about you, man?
I kind of just personally on how I kind of help connect with clients and new customers, and is more around empathy, putting myself in their shoes. And there was one kind of mantra that one of my first bosses told me was surprise and delight. A nice little surprise that going above and beyond to help onboard a customer where they've had a good experience is generally going to lead to a healthy relationship, a good review. And then also on that same note is under promise and over deliver, so that you're always having that customer service at the forefront. So I think that's how all of our Elephant Room team have kind of cottoned onto those mantras, and also we're trying to grow Giftnote in that same sense.
Yeah, I would say with those two pieces of advice, Giftnote is the natural result of thinking that way. But great stuff, fellas. Thank you so much for joining us. Your morning, our evening, but it was a blast from across the world, and hopefully we can get together in person in 2023. That would be awesome.
That would be amazing. Thanks for having us. It was awesome. It was a really good chat.
Awesome.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Mariah.
Thank you.